hovering over us. So as we mentioned, the first event here is the women's 1500-meter freestyle. One heat. Now let's just talk through this, because essentially these swimmers are swimming against the clock here, with perhaps the fastest seeded swimmers going in a single heat at the start of the evening program.
Yeah, it's known as a timed event, and the medals can come from any number of heats. In this case, we have 2 heats, one in the morning, and the fastest entries will be in the finals session, and that will be seeded according to the entry times as per normal, with lanes 4 and 5, the key lanes.
So these swimmers will essentially set the benchmark for those swimmers tonight who, on the basis of their recent performances and lifetime best performances, are seeded to be faster than the trio who will be lining up in this single heat here. However, should their times be superior to those in the evening, they will collect the medals. So there is absolutely everything for them to compete against here. But we're just awaiting the arrival of those swimmers. The Japanese with plenty of support, and I can imagine looking forward 2 years, of course. It's going to be Japan's big day, the Olympic Games returning to Tokyo after more than half a century.
Yeah, Japan have taken up the characteristic now of modern swimming and racing hard before they come to a key meet. They've just come off the Pan-Pacific Championships, which were held in Tokyo, but against the might of Canada and the United States. And now they're coming to their main championships, the Asian. So they're racing really hard before they come here.
And as a swimmer, are you able to produce 2 peaks within such a close space of time, or do you tend to have to focus rather more on one, perhaps as a priority over the other?
Well, for them, the time's too short, really, to call it a 2-peak season. It's only been a couple of weeks since they finished the Pan Pacs, so they're carrying over their taper and their preparation to this meet, and hoping that it holds up against the mighty challengers of China.
Yes, I think it's important to make the point that Drew, as well as being a commentator with many years' experience, also has a fair old record as a swimming coach as well. So we await the arrival of the women participating in this 1500-meter freestyle, and here they are, waiting to come in there in the having gone through the call process. Now that's a unique process when we get to major championships and major games. It's, in many respects, it's a real test of swimmers, participants' mental strength, that they can go through that process. It's a very different routine to many other sort of events, isn't it?
Well, it's very interesting how they structure the call room. A lot of swimmers don't like to be next to their competitors, like to prepare on their own.
But you don't get much alternative, do you?
No.
So the still water soon to be broken by this triumvirate 1500-meter swimmers, which in the traditional Olympic program, in the main aquatic events, is the ultimate endurance test.
Well, there's a big argument about 800 and 1500, and no 15. They're trying to equalize the sexes, and a lot of people would like to see just the 1500 for both men and for women, and get rid of the 800. The 800's it's a distance which falls between a true endurance event and obviously the sprint events, which now the 400 starts to look like you know, the balance between the two, sprint and endurance. So there's a big argument going on about what to include at the Olympics and Worlds.
Do you anticipate an alteration sometime over the course of the next
it's too
couple of
much.
games?
15 and 8 for both men and women is just too much in the programme. At least the women here are going from 1500, and then later in the programme we'll find an 800. But sometimes it can be the other way around, and that leaves the true distance swimmer at a slight disadvantage moving up the distance.
So the 3 participants here.
This is a long wait, Martin, for these swimmers, even although they might be in the slower heat.
Representing Asia Swimming Federation, Ms. Kazumi Eguchi.
Yes, the 3 participants. Thi Linh Mai of Vietnam, Gabriela Due of Lebanon, and Xiao Lam Katil Tang of Hong Kong, China. So they've been given the all clear.
Yeah, you know, at every competition, the first session's always going to have challenges and bumps and ripples, and that was a long introduction for the technical officials, and that's just left the swimmers out too early, really.
Yes, and for those who are not necessarily aficionados of competitive swimming, well, we do have a bit of time. We can run through 1 or 2 of the roles. We can see their officials sitting behind the blocks. What is their primary function?
That's your timekeeper, turn judge, stroke judge within the event. Busy people.
Yes, it's remarkable how the advances in technology and television have altered competitive swimming. Some of these views that we're getting really are quite stunning.
They're not ready. The backstroke flags in the pool after the warm-up session, and they need to take it out for the freestyle.
Yes, those flags which you, again, if you're not necessarily aficionados with competitive swimming, you'll see they're hovering over the pool, and they are there for the benefit of backstrokers. So those have just been put behind the blocks there. As you say, it's a fair old mental test for those 3 athletes who are having to deal with all the stuff going on at the periphery at the moment.
And with the heat down at the poolside, it could be wilted.
That is Mai of Vietnam. She will come and sit behind the starting block in lane 3. And there is Choi Lam Katil Tang for Hong Kong, China. And she goes in lane 5. Here is the Lebanese swimmer, Gabriela Due of Lebanon.
It has to be noted that if they're going to do that every single heat, this is going to take a long time. I think they're going to be off schedule.
So there we can see some of the significant landmarks in this event. The world record, Katie Ledecky of the United States. So the world record in this event, just outside 15 minutes. So we're underway. The first event on the opening morning in the GBK Aquatic Centre. The women's 1,500 metres, so the 50-metre pool, 30 lengths of it.
Well, what you're hoping for here, Martin, is that the entry times are stretched between 17 minutes 31 and 17:44. You'd like to think that they could swim fairly close and get a good competition for their heat swim. Because for some of the developing nations, this could be a chance at a national record, certainly a chance for a personal best time. But if you don't have competition beside you, it's a very lonely swim.
So coming through to complete the first 100 metres, and it's Tang who has a lead by about a length from Due of Lebanon, and Mai at the moment, Vietnamese, there in third place. Let's just talk a bit about the preparation for swimmers in this, which in the mainstream Olympic events is the sort of the ultimate endurance test. I mean, what sort of work are they doing in preparation for an event like this, away from the competitive season?
I think first of all, you have to differentiate between swimmers in the smaller nations who might well be doing this as a hobby, a sport, and getting picked for the national team off, minimal training, against the full-time professional athletes that you will find in the bigger countries, the more developed countries. And they'll be doing a very similar program, building up over a period. It's usually periodization. So the distance swimmers, they're just putting in lots of pace swims, lots of distance, build up the endurance, and they've been picked out because they have the kind of metabolism that can deal with the build-up of lactic acid in the muscles, and also they have the mentality, as you were talking about, to grit their teeth and stick at it. This is the real tough event of the program, and it's often underrated, especially on the men's side.
So presumably, in a day, in the middle of their toughest training period of the year, they are spending hours in the water?
No, they'll, like many of the swimmers, they'll have 2-by-2 hour sessions, and they'll have some gym work and some land work, but the nature of the session will be around pace and endurance, and obviously quite a lot of work on freestyle, which is the bedrock of the swim program.
Yeah, in terms of the specific work, how much time in the pool, how much time in the gym? Clearly, weight training plays a heavy part in their preparation.
Yeah, 2 2-hour sessions, one in the morning, one in the evening. Lots of countries have to still go early morning to not clog up the public facility, and then maybe an hour and a half in the gym later on. Important thing here is technique of modern swimmers who are super fit. In the freestyle, we'll have a positive 6-beat leg kick at the back. But that's very difficult to sustain. Many swimmers are still very arm dominant, get the rhythm in the front of the body, and the legs simply are a counterbalance. They're just kicking the body up, keeping it flat, reducing as much frontal resistance as possible.
And when you talk a 6-beat leg kick, we're talking about the number of kicks of the feet for every complete stroke cycle.
Yeah, you measure it from one arm entry to the next entry on that same arm. That's a stroke cycle. Front crawl, it's 2 alternating arms, but you have to count it from, say, the right hand entering, and the number of kicks that go with that alternating action. So,
and how much does that differ, Drew, between perhaps a swimmer in the 200-meter freestyle to an endurance swimmer doing the metric mile?
well, as I said earlier, the modern swimmer can now hold the 6 speed all the way through. If you look at the top swimmers like, you know, especially in the men, Paltrinieri, etc., he has nothing when he's doing 1500. But Romanchuk, his big component, is the 6 speed leg kicker. So it's a style thing and it's a fitness thing. But when you come down the distances, you then find that the 6 speed is not only there in every swimmer, but it's much stronger in the sprint swimmer.
And in terms of the strokes, if we go through the evolution of swimming, particularly endurance swimming, what have been the great changes over 2 or 3 decades?
Well, the biggest difference, I think, for all strokes and distances has been the introduction and the use of sports science. So, better measurement of stroke rate, tempo, heart rate, lactic acid in the body. A lot of, you know, now bringing out measurements of the line of force, the application of force, to see how you can get the best tracking in the pool. There's still many people think that it's about putting the hand in the water and drawing it back, but in fact what you're doing, top swimmers can feel the water and they create a fulcrum on the hand and they actually lever the body past the hand. There's always some slippage because it's a liquid medium, but you're trying to get the best hold you can on the water. In the front crawl, there used to be a very definitive S shape of the hand. Now the stronger swimmers, and that's because of full-time training, they can hold a straight line almost going backwards. So that's the biggest change in the freestyle. But in the sport, it's been about sports science, better education of coaches. The techniques are out there. It's really about matching the technique to the athlete.
So if we were to go back, I mean, many people who, again, who are not necessarily aficionados of the sport, they'll go back to 1972, they'll go back to Mark Spitz picking up 7 golds in Munich. If you were to look at the technique of a Spitz as compared with a leading swimmer today, would even the untrained eye be able to see pretty fundamental differences in technique?
Yes, you would see, for example, the top sprinters, although you've just picked a very difficult example because of his range of distances, and he covered freestyle and butterfly, so it's a difficult one to use as the marker. But where you had in the sprint events bent arm, S-shaped pool in the 60s and 70s, you're now seeing straight arm recovery because the swimmer is much stronger. The athlete is able to hold that straight arm position. You're seeing a much higher turnover of the stroke, and you can get that not only in the short 50s and 100s, but you can see a higher tempo in the 200 and even the 400 because they're able to sustain it.
So the swimmers have been going for almost 9 minutes. And in lane 5, Soi Lam Katil Tang of Hong Kong, China. And that is 800 meters. So into the second half of this swim.
Now what 1500 meter swimmers talk about is the pattern that they're going to use. And in their career, if they're going to swim over a number of years, they should experiment with those patterns. Some think of it as 3 400s and a final 300. Some will think about 2 800s. So you're doing the first half and the second half either at the same speed or slightly faster in the second half because you're coming home. But as you get into that second half, obviously you're tired, so it has an effect. A lot of swimmers will maybe think about the 200 distance and split the race into the 200s, because that's the kind of basis for the training program. They'll maybe go 15, 20, 200, so they'll know the pace for 200. But here you can see that Tang is well out on her own, and the race has really lost its competitive edge. So these swimmers are actually swimming in an individual pipeline of their own pace and how they feel this morning. It's unusual to get a 1500 at the front end of a program of swimming. This is very strange and unusual.
So swimming towards 2/3 distance, and Tang's advantage something like 35 meters over her closest pursuer. There in lane 4 is Gabriela Doué, the Lebanese swimmer. Interestingly, according to the qualifying times that they brought to these games, Doué was actually the fastest of the three. But as fatigue starts to set in now, inevitably she moves now to the final third of the race. Technically, what things is she mindful of? What changes do you make? Because presumably your rate of stroke, that increases?
No, if anything, it would decrease. It's very difficult in the 1500 to suddenly change gear and speed up. So they have to use the first part of the race to see how they feel, to see if they can transfer the training to the competition. And of course, some of these times have been done over a long period, so you can have like Doué, a 17:31, that might have been done a year ago. It's still a qualifying time for this, but it's how she is on the day, and you can see that she's nothing like the 17:31 that she's entered on.
So that's Doué just going through that turn. The Vietnamese at the moment in 3rd place. But just a reminder here that Tang from Hong Kong, China, operating essentially against the clock. This is a timed event. We do have the second heat when we can expect all the lanes to be filled. That's at the start of the evening program, and it will be by putting the times together from this first heat this morning with those in the evening that the medals will be determined.
This is now a standard Olympic facility with 10 lanes in the pool. When it's really busy at a competition, you can use all 10 for the heats, and usually it's 8 for the final. So the lanes are numbered 0 to 9. What you're looking at are the 2 golden lanes. Tang on the right there is in lane 5. Usually the faster swimmer in any heat or final is in lane 4. And then there's this special seeding process, which we can better talk about later on in this heat session and tonight. But Tang there just trying to keep not only the rhythm, but the length of stroke underwater. You can see she's going through in 13:44. She's swimming about 1 minute 10. 1 minute 9 for each 100. So she's holding pace, but it has got slower since the early part of the swim.
So the 10-lane pool, those lanes you can see numbered 0 to 9 when we get to the finals, and there are 8 participants. They will occupy lanes 1 to 8. I mean, back in the old days, there used to be a significant disadvantage being right up against the wall, but the design of pools is so much better these days, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. The water tends to flow over into a draining system, and then it's recycled.
Because back in the old days, you got some backwash from the swimmers.
Also, you can see at the top of the viewing screen that it's deck level, so the pool is deck level. In the old days, you would find maybe 18 inches or, you know, 1 meter of tiles or wall, and that created the backlash of water back into the pool. at this speed, and with no one beside you, there's not even a chance. You get 1,500 races, Martin, where the swimmer can go to the side of the pool and get a little tow from the person in the next lane, providing they're going roughly at the same speed. You see that in the top swims. Might see that in the men's event.
Well, there's an interesting number you can see bottom left-hand corner of your screen. The world record split. That world record set by Katie Ledecky, the American, in Indianapolis. Not that long ago, earlier this year.
Yeah, that was at the United States Open Championships, and Ledecky, a fairly free swim.
So,
Bell, 100 to go, should see a pickup. And if she really can see the leg kick coming in now from Tang, she's got a real chance of really blasting that 17:37.
So into the wall for the final time. And you can see your two rivals there. Almost 50 meters adrift.
Now, when Tang brings in the legs here, and you can see now the stroke rate's picking up and she's starting to motor a little bit, tells you she's got too much energy left.
That's spoken like a coach.
Sorry, yes.
So bear in mind, she's operating against the clock. This time will be taken to this evening's second heat.
But you can hear the heavy splash of water, but that's a super little swim. 17:08 off a 17:37, Martin. Excellent.
Yeah, so she's taken almost half a minute off that qualifying time, and the athlete from Hong Kong, China, there she is. Wins our first heat in competition here in Jakarta. It will be...
The other two in the field are not even racing, so it's probably a disappointment for Dewey.
So Dewey's time coming through there in 17:37.77, so very close to the qualifying time that she brought to this event.
But Mai of Vietnam has just knocked 4 seconds off her entry time. There's the very positive start. Good little skills there, not as tight as you'll see with the top swimmers, but good streamlining on the entry, waiting to take the speed of the dive into the stroke, and then setting off on their 1500 journey. Tang, though, dominated the event from early on. She should be really pleased with that.
So there's our winner. And a time confirmed at 17:08.39. There we have it. Gabriel Dewey of Lebanon in second place, 17 minutes 37.77. And Thi Linh Mai of Vietnam in third, 17:40.56.